Recording has started.
Okay, at 11:52, we have come out of executive session for security matters, and we're going to jump right into the county relief block grant. We had a productive meeting yesterday going through the application for the business grant, also discussing support to municipalities, and we're going to pick up where we left off. So we'll turn it back over to Mary Kay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Steve, you're on the call. Commissioner Dersham, you're on the call, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. Happy that you're here. So I'm sorry that you're not going to be seeing this, but Chad Joyce has been an exceptional resource and help with this process, with the application, and I really feel like we're coming down the home stretch on this. So Chad's going to share. Would you mind sharing the application, Chad? Because I think he frantically made some changes. And Commissioner Dersham, what we can do is maybe as Chad is describing it, or if you'd like me to, I can tell you some of the components. This is the online version of this grant. And then we'll talk a bit about how we're going to be ranking or scoring. And then we'll take a look at the municipalities. So what I'll just ask Commissioner Dersham, do you have any questions up front, because you weren't at the meeting yesterday?
No, I'm good. Go. I'm good, Mary Kay. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Chad, take it away. Maybe if you could just highlight, Chad, the key points as you go through. Would that be all right?
Yeah. Do you want me to go through the applications similar like I did yesterday through the whole thing?
I don't think you have to enter in data, but just maybe describe what each of the components are. And then if the commissioners or Margaret or any of our guests have questions, we'd be happy to take them.
Okay. So Mary Kay's been working on the application content and questions. We have entered a contract with Qualtrics, which is a high-end survey and data collection tool that will allow us to compile all the applications easily in a nice export, and any scoring components that are involved in the application, we'll be able to automatically tally the score, and so we can put them in order, and the score can be used however the commissioners see fit. So the application follows just the basic demographics, asking questions about the business, what type of industry it's in. It goes through how old the business is. It asks if there are any either loans or grants that were already received for COVID-19. It asks revenue year over year compared to last year. It asks, I believe, other expenses that are related to COVID-19, such as purchasing PPE, et cetera. And then there will be a calculation on the difference in that. There's an area where tax information can be uploaded. I think that was cover the main areas. Did I miss anything, Mary Kay? I think you might be on mute.
Thank you. I sent Chad the notes from the corrections as we went through the application, and I believe that he already made some of those. So I guess some of the key points that we just wanted to talk about today was the whole notion of whenever we're doing scoring metrics for this application, there were a couple items that we were looking at, and one was longevity in the business. Are we looking at, I'm going to call it rewarding businesses that have been in business for a longer time, or do we want to reward businesses that are newer? Because we kind of have them, it depends how we do the ranking. And so I'll let Commissioner Pipe, Commissioner Higgins maybe weigh in, and then Commissioner Dersham can give us his insights.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Mary Kay. And essentially what it came down to is we have these 4 point categories for the business grants, and they really are, I think we're all, if you could actually put that, I don't know if you have that scoring metric that you can put on the screen,
Yes,
Chad.
I'll put it up here in a second.
Okay, thank you. But we have how long the business has been around, how many employees they have, what type of revenue loss did they experience, and then what type of business they are by sector. And uh, we had consensus yesterday about businesses, obviously, that have lost more revenue would be scored, would get more points. We had general consensus on some of the industries that would get more points, but we still need to get. We asked Mary Kay to see if she could find out some data, some objective data related to that. But really, where we needed you to weigh in, Steve, was on the points for larger businesses or smaller businesses, and then also on the length of time businesses have been around. So we wanted to get your thoughts on those two things, whether we want to give more points to businesses that have been around longer or more points to businesses that haven't been, and then also more points to businesses that have 100 or 90, 100 employees, or more points to businesses that are smaller in the 1 to 10 category.
Why don't we take the number of employees first? So, Commissioner Dersham, I know you're at a disadvantage because you can't see the screen, but do we want to reward larger businesses? And when I say that, like, this is what we're trying to do with this software program, is to be as logical, and I keep on going, I don't know who said this to me, but it says it well. We're trying to look at, quote, the science of the document. Keeping in mind, once we do ratings and scales on this, we're going to get rankings. Now, the part of the art that the commissioners will be involved in is that this information will go to the Small Business Development Center, and they'll do some sifting and sorting and determining, hey, if somebody applied that doesn't even make sense, then they will give us that data because they're aware of these businesses. But what it comes down to, you're going to get a list, the commissioners will get a list, and then you'll make a determination then as to the amount of grant awards they'll be getting, and who will be getting it. But the main thing I wanted just to know now, do we want to, right now we're, quote, rewarding more heavily larger businesses and then decreasing down to giving less points for smaller businesses. And what is your perspective on that, Steve?
Are you I guess I'm lost here. Are you referring to the amount of money we give them, or the fact we will give them or not give them money? I think you have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. I mean, you can score this and you can score that, but ultimately, I think you need to look at the whole breadth and scope of the discussion about each business. I don't know that you can have a simple, is this way heavier than another? I mean, you might have a business that just started this year that really has been devastated. So, I mean, yeah, we're going to give money. How much? We have to figure that out, I think, on a case-by-case basis. So I don't know that you can have a tried and true metric that's going to work in, every situation.
The challenge with that, though, is we would have to comb through every application, and it becomes much more subjective. So yeah, we're sort of then we've got three positions on this then.
Right. So, Steve, what Mary Kay's talking about right now is more the science. We're trying to come up with a rough scoring system so that when we do sit down and look at it on a one-by-one basis, we can go through 500, 800, 1,000 applications relatively quickly. So we're all in rough agreement that the worse your revenue decline, the more points you get. We're in
So if you're
pretty
a
good.
business that has no revenue history, what do you do then?
What's that?
What do you do if you're a new business and have no revenue history?
Then that's one reason why we might give the newer businesses more points compared to the older ones. But it would have to be a super new business. I mean, we're comparing revenue from early 2019 to 2020. So if you were in business in 2019, you've got numbers.
Okay, well, whatever you guys want to do, I'm fine with.
Well, here's the problem. We have different perspectives on this. So I'm of the yeah. I'm more in favor of having businesses that have not been around a while getting more points. Mark was suggesting we would want to have businesses who have been around longer get more points. And then on the employee size, I was suggesting the smaller businesses should get more points. Mark was suggesting that the larger businesses should get more points.
And I'm flexible on the numbers in the categories to help some of our smaller businesses and to help some of our newer businesses. But in my opinion, if somebody employs 70 Center County citizens, that we should maybe give them a little more money potentially than a business that employs 2 people. And same thing from a longevity standpoint. You know, if you've been in business 2 or 3 years, that's good, but you know, well over half of small businesses don't make it through the first 5 years, even in good times. Whereas, you know, maybe you've been around for 30, 40, 50 years, you're kind of an icon in the community. I think maybe you should get a few more points for that.
And then just from a broader perspective, Commissioner Dersham, the reason why we're trying to set this prior to the application going out is the fantastic thing that Qualtrics does. Chad was showing us this report or the Excel spreadsheet that once people submit the application, it basically automatically spits out a score. So the benefit there is that we're going to get an automatic ranking after they're through this. So that's why we're trying to figure out these nuts and bolts up front. I will say, just so we don't forget about it, I think we will need to have in the application something that does say if you're a business that's been, was started in February, we are going to have to allow them some sort of way to provide some more information because they're not going to be able to answer that first question about the revenue decline year over year. So I think we might need to think about that, how that's going to look, or we instruct them just to say, put in 0. So in 2019, if you existed prior to, or if you weren't in existence during 2019, you're going to have to put zeros in. But we do have to think about that because there may be businesses in that category. But anyway, that's a little bit wise. We're essentially looking for your input on this, Steve.
I think on new businesses, you got to take them on a case by case basis. I can live with either way. I mean, if you want to wait the longevity of the business as part of the conversation, I'm fine with that. But I think on particularly new businesses, and you're going to have a few of them in there, I think you need to look at those. I don't think your scoring matrix is going to fit very well in that picture. So if they just started in the beginning of 2020 or late 2019, I think you need to have a special category of consideration for them that I don't think your computer program is going to be able to help you with. Other than that, I'm good. I'm comfortable. If you want to wait, if you want to do a mix of that, if you want to do I think probably the older businesses and the higher population of employees probably lends itself to more conversation because they're probably hit harder. Maybe not, I don't know, but I think it also depends on how you want to look at how much you're going to weigh the other federal monies that are coming their way. Because some of the larger businesses are obviously probably have received that money and probably a very large amount of it.
Right. So, Steve, for the medium-sized and larger small businesses that did receive PPP and EIDL, they will be penalized a couple of different ways. First, they're not going to be in the first round of checks. They're going to be in the second round of checks. And second, we're working with the SBDC for some sort of mechanism to sort of penalize people who got PPP and EIDLs because we don't want to be in a situation where there's a business where the PPP and EIDL combined almost equal their losses during the period. Did I summarize that correctly, Mary Kay?
That is correct. I mean, so in that situation, Commissioner Higgins, they will have, their numbers, even though they might have had a lot of loss, that there's going to be that calculation so that instead of like if they've not gotten anything, they might have a $50,000 loss. But if I've received PPP or EIDL, I might only have a $20,000 loss because that's going to be in the mix. So that's how they'll be, quote, penalized. And you're absolutely right. They won't be the first ones out of the gate to get the checks.
Okay, Mike, are you in favor of putting weight behind the? You live with putting weight behind the longevity and the number of employees, or are you committed to looking at another formula?
I mean, I think a compromise could look like where we switch one of them, so we would flip it so that we would give more money to, or we'd give more points to businesses that are smaller businesses, but give more points to businesses that have been around longer. I think that might be a way to do it. I'd be willing to live with that. That could be a compromise.
Okay, let's do it that way then. I can live with that.
So
all right, Mark.
I'm very willing to compromise on the size of business in terms of making the initial categories much smaller. I know it was easier for Chad to just go, well, I've got 10 categories. I can do up to 100 employees per business. I'll just divide it up by tens. But I think the number of employees for the lowest points, maybe we could make that be like 1 employee. And then maybe the next category is 2 to 5. And the next category is 6 to 10, to the point where when we're all the way out to the maximum number of points, that's for like small businesses with 51 to 100 employees. I'm also trying to vaguely craft this so that each category might contain no more than, say, 20% of small businesses. I think if we're 1 to 10 employees in our first category, oh my gosh, Mary Kay, what would that be? 40%, 50% of our small businesses have less than 10 employees.
Yes. So am I hearing that?
Yeah. Yeah. So if we do make those adjustments, that works for me. If we do that, but I think Chad, and you might be doing this first, but it would be where that would be flipped, where somebody who has 1 employee would get 10 points.
So it would just be inverted. That whole category would be inverted.
And just out of curiosity, so thank you, everybody. I appreciate us getting to a consensus on that. That's good.
Thank you.
And I don't know if this is possible, Chad, but is it where we could easily rerun the formula? So let's say everybody puts their data in and we get this spreadsheet that pops out. Are we able to change the formula and then hit run again and get a new spreadsheet?
I don't know, but it produces the results in Excel, and Excel's pretty good at formulas. So if it did change after the fact, I think I could come up with something to adapt the points if need be.
Okay, and I just say that because it would be good to we at least have a baseline here, but if we get applications that are just skewing left and right and zigging and zagging, we may want to go back in to make some modifications to the formula, just because if we're not seeing what we're liking in terms of the data just not being there. So again, but this sounds like I think we've gotten to a good place on those 3. So we've got basically revenue decline, number of employees, and length of business locked down. When it comes to the impact by the county broken out by the industries, I think that's where we were doing a little bit more work. I know we had emailed Erica Mulberger at the Workforce Development Board, seeing if she could pull any data industry specific. But essentially, Steve, where we were at yesterday was there's about 15 different kinds of industry that we have broken out by the NAICS score. And we can either kind of go in 3 directions, where we take that list and we say amongst ourselves, and the Small Business Development Center did this a little bit, where they basically say, well, let's sort of just rank them as we see fit. Another option would be to take the unemployment data that we have per industry and say, well, if you've had the largest decrease year over year in unemployment, you're going to get more points. A third option would be blending them together to take in both into account and come up with something like that. So we'd rank them by year over year loss of increase in unemployment, and then we make some modifications based upon some things. So those are kind of the three options we have here, but it doesn't sound like we got any data back from Erica, Mary Kay. Is that correct?
Yeah, I reached out to her, and then I also reached out to Elizabeth Hay from SBDC, where I said, can you give me any data? I did end up Googling and found that document that you had yesterday, Michael, in the meeting, and I sent that over to her. So I do not. I mean, I did try to get information, but I don't have any more. I just don't. So, I mean, I think what would really be helpful for me is just, I did find out one thing. If we take a look at category K, where we have transportation and warehousing, those are two separate NAIC codes. So we can move, I was hearing transportation should be moved up, warehousing stay there. So we can move that. We can move transportation up.
Okay, great.
So
I'd be fine with that, yeah.
So would I be able to just take a few minutes of your time and just, if we could just take a look on category C, we have manufacturing, professional, scientific, and technical services. That would be the category that would get, quote, the most heavily scored points. Does anybody have anything they would want to add into that, and or do those look okay to you? So basically our small or large manufacturing, tech services, high-tech industries would be there. Mine went away. It was Chad. Did you update something? Yay! Thank you.
I think the challenge, again, I appreciate what you're doing here, Mary Kay. I think the challenge becomes when somebody comes to us and says, how did you score this? Why'd you score it that way? If we can, my suggestion from getting that baseline unemployment data is important, because then we can say, look, these are the industries that have been hit the hardest and most. The workers in this industry have been hit hardest the most. And using that data, I think, is helpful, again, from a citizen standpoint or from a business standpoint. But I do appreciate the fact that we may need to make some modifications based upon what we see as important industries. But again, I think that the most objective we can be about this, the most important. So that's just my sense on that. But if we wanted to proceed with this, we can certainly do that and rank these or score these. But
I mean, I'm happy to hold off. I mean, I'm happy to hold off on this. The only thing that I'm just sensitive in that I know the urgency that everybody has. So I'm happy to hold off or I'm happy to, I just didn't get the data from people. I did try. So.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I would be happy to. So I also serve on the State Workforce Development Board, and whenever I've had questions on unemployment, they have been lightning fast with me. I can reach out to them right now and see if I can get something. I don't think I'm going to get it in the next 15 minutes, but I could at least get that, and maybe via email. I think we're comfortable. We're comfortable at this point via email. Maybe taking a look at that data. Maybe on Tuesday we can jump back to it, or again, I think over email. Everybody knows we're doing the grant at this point. We may make modifications, but I think over email we could at least share that list, and people could make suggestions back to Mary Kay, and then you could present it at a future meeting. But we do want to wrap that up, I think.
Okay, I'd be happy to go that route. And I did just separately, I did send Erica a message also. So she might be on vacation or something. I have not heard back from her, Erica Mulberg. So it sounds like we'll just, we know we're going to separate transportation and warehousing, but I'll put a little table together and I'll send that out. And then when I get, perhaps what I could do is do like option 1 and option 2, and then you can give me some insights over email. because I think that's one of the last key pieces. And then I think, boy, I hate to say this, but I'm optimistic that we might be ready to go. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Right, and I'd be happy to work with Mary Kay and Chad about reversing the weighting on the number of employees and trying to come up with categories that would capture, the number of employees in categories that might contain at least 5, if not 20% of everybody in each category. Because, right, I think at one point we had like 100 employees was its own category. I don't even know if we're going to have any single business in Center County that has 100 employees.
Right. Okay.
And
thank you.
also, let me say this now, and I don't want to throw a monkey monkey wrench into the mix here, but we could almost grade this on a scale. If Chad is able to verify for us that we could put the numbers in as a formula, that's fine, and have them there. But if we needed to make any modifications to the formula in the Excel spreadsheet, if he's able to verify that, I could certainly see us basically taking, let's say 100 businesses apply, and we know that the businesses, vary from, basically score it fairly and equally. So if we've got businesses that are, people, you understand what I'm saying, where we wouldn't, because we might not be weighting these equally, but if we have 100 businesses and it's more skewed towards this side or that side, we could always take a look at it. But if you could, my only thing is I think we may want to adjust this once we see what we get, but this is at least a good starting point. But if you could verify that, Chad, at the very least, that would be helpful. But yeah, that sounds good, Mark. If you wanted to, I have no problem with that.
Thanks.
I'll reach out to Qualtrics today and then see if we can, modify the formula and rerun the results afterwards if we decide to, change the scoring system.
So, Chad, before you reach out to Qualtrics, maybe we can chat, because I was curious about if there's any way to download this into an application, a paper application, if we need to do that rather than, doing the other one into a PDF. So maybe we could find that out from them. And there's a few other tricks up my sleeve here on my note sheet. So that would be awesome.
Sounds good. We can talk this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Anything else from the business application? Anything else? Anybody, Commissioner Dersham, any questions you have in particularly or comments?
I'm good.
Commissioner Higgins, Commissioner Pipe?
Sure, I did have one thing that I thought was important. It was pointed out that earlier this week, the state DCED released the first grants for the statewide business grants, and there were 47 businesses in Center County that received those funds. I think based upon that, we would want to include in the grant application a question, basically where the EIDL and the PPP questions are asked, is if a business received first round of that grant, because I think it'd be important to know that, because the way the DCD application's structured is it's giving preference to businesses that haven't received state or federal money. So I think we want to include that from this standpoint.
Thank you. Do you know what that was called in particular?
That's the Progress Fund. Yeah. So if you go to the Progress Fund website, that's what they award. That's what that business grant is. Like the statewide COVID-19 small business grant relief thing. But the second round just started. You can apply again, or your business will be carried over if you didn't get it for a second round. But I don't think they're going to give that money out till September. So, but I think it would be important on the application to include that as a possible relief, because it'd be helpful to know for our standpoint if there's businesses out there applying that have gotten federal, state, and they're also asking us for money. I think that's a good thing for us to be able to know and push and give to our citizens and let them know that, look, businesses are needing help from all angles. Give that info, or relay that back to the state and the feds as well, saying that there's more relief needed. Anyway, just a suggestion.
So what we can do is I'll meet with Chad. We can come up with another category that says any other state, federal, or any other grants or loans, and then maybe put example progress fund grants, just so that's noted, and we'll come into the calculation process. So thank you. That's a great addition. Okay. I will just mention one thing while that I have everybody, is that supposedly tomorrow DCED is putting on their website. It's in the governor's office right now. They had 200 questions that they're trying to gain clarity about some issues. So Commissioner Higgins was asking me how to, if we can give money to 501c6s and such. And so it seems like things are shifting and moving a little bit. So there is probably more information coming out either Friday or Monday, and we'll either be really excited or we'll be tearing at our hair. I'm not sure which it's going to be. So just wanted to make that mention. Anything else on this application before we move on? Awesome. Thank you. So we're going to turn our attention over to the municipality piece. We talked about this a couple times, and now we want to take a look. And I think Margaret was, Margaret, do you have that Excel, or do you want me to pull it up? We were going to take a look at, so just for other people on the call that may not be aware, part of this grant is that we are going to be offering municipalities money, and they can use those. We're going to award them or grant them X dollars, and we're trying to come up with a formula for that. And of that formula, we're not just going to mail them out a check for $2,550. We're going to tell them what the amount is, but they have to supply us with receipts for actual expenditures. Police force and security can be part of that. And so we were trying to come up with some formulas, and Margaret came up with some options, and that's where we are. And any questions before Margaret is there?
Chad, are you still on the line?
Yes, I have the document. I was going to put it up now.
That would be great if you could share it. So thanks, Mary Kay. Just some context here. The board discussed proposed allocations to municipalities last Thursday. There was a request to look at what is option 2 on this sheet, and I'll go through each of these options. We recognize that the total for that particular option exceeded our target, so we thought we would put another option or 2 out there just for discussion before you make a final decision. There are 3 proposals here, and the first one really mirrors the way, kind of interestingly, the way in which the county received the County Relief Block Grant funding. All counties received an amount based on their population, and there was a floor for the counties that were smaller and didn't have the same types of population numbers that the other counties had. So this follows that kind of thinking. It's based on taking the population of each municipality, multiplying that by $10 per person. There are 9 municipalities for which, when you multiply out $10 per person, that the allocation to them would be less than $10,000. So option 1 proposes to adjust the base upward for those 9 municipalities so that there's a floor of $10,000 with everyone getting $10 per person. Option 2 approaches it a little bit differently. It says each and every municipality in the county will receive a base of $8,000, and on top of that base, added on to it will be $9 per person based on their population, of course. That proposal brings us in at $41,465 over the targeted amount. That can be adjusted, of course. Option 3 is the same type of model, but it uses a base of $7,000. So each municipality would receive $7,000, and then added on to it would be a $9 per person amount. The total of that brings us within about $6,500 of the targeted amount of $1.7 million for the municipalities. These are two options 2 and 3 are similar, just adjustments to the base. Option 1 gets us to the same place. It's just defining what the floor is, again, by using the $10,000 and a $10 per person fee. I know we spent a considerable amount of time, maybe not considerable, but some time yesterday talking about this. What it looks like.
Okay. So the metric we had gone with before last week was option 2, $8,000 to everybody, and then taking 1 point, what would that be? 1.4-ish, and then spreading that out per population based on the 2019 interim census data. So we're looking at some other options. Wanted to get feedback on that and then proceed.
This is Steve. The only other conversation I'd like to continue is, I think I've talked about it before, is I would like a supplemental allocation to Bellefonte Borough as the county seat and providing police coverage to the county as part of this discussion.
Duly noted. I think we are per this. Let's see where we're at. They're going to get anywhere from 62 to 64,000, but it's absolutely on our radar screens, Commissioner. Absolutely.
As long as we understand it, that's quite important to me. I think we owe it to the borough because they've come to our aid, and every time there's a criminal incident that involves the county, they are generally the investigating agency.
So just for clarification, are you looking for an allocation that would go directly to the police in Bellefonte Borough?
It would be for police services provided, yes.
Commissioner Dersham, though, could we just send the allocation to the Bellefonte Borough, and then they could use that? They could gain reimbursement by their receipts or payroll.
Well, what I'm asking for is an amount above and beyond the formula that was discussed earlier.
Okay. But can it go just to the borough with that express purpose in mind, or do you want a separate entity, like a separate announcement? Is I think what Margaret was asking.
I don't care how the money gets allocated, but I want the amount to indicate that.
No, like we said, Commissioner, duly noted. Once we get through this first round of just getting everybody some equal funding out, we can then take a look at that. I pledge to you that we will specifically look at that.
I appreciate that. That's what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Absolutely, you bet. Okay, so we have option 2 as our previously selected option, but if there's any interest in looking at option 1 or option 3, we'd be happy to consider that at this point. Okay. All right, so we will stay then with option 2. We appreciate Margaret putting these numbers together for us to look at, and we know the focus right now is getting information out to businesses for the grant. But if there, Mary Kay, we talked about last week about getting some sort of notice out to them, but if that is not possible due to bandwidth, we appreciate that, and we can wait until there's more. We're at a slight lull or a little bit of a decline in terms of the business grant. But any feedback on that at this point?
No, I mean, I think as long as I don't think Natalie's still on the phone. I mean, Natalie, I believe, has all of the contact information, And I think what we just simply need to do is, I have part of a letter already drafted. And so the letter would, basically say congratulations, and explain a little bit about this and explain what the funds could be used for. I believe this could be emailed out, Friday or Monday, as long as, I should clarify this, please. Do the option 2 amounts, do they need to be approved at a commissioner meeting on Tuesday?
No, I don't think they would be. We approved the PPP funds at a Thursday meeting, so we wouldn't have to do that. No.
Okay.
If I could just interject here too. I think we had also talked about a letter coming from the Board of Commissioners, so that there would be a separate letter to each municipality. And Natalie, as Mary Kay said, can do the mail merge for that. We can either email those letters or send them by the postal service. But I think we had talked about something formally coming from the board.
Correct. And in addition, we opted just to do the email, just to email them out. Yeah. Yeah. So we wouldn't do physical.
Email the letters.
That's correct. Yes. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But yes, it would come from us. Absolutely. Yep.
And I do want to stress, I think we talked about this before, in the letter, we need to say that this dollar amount is the maximum that you would be receiving at this point, that you have to provide documentation as to how you're spending the money. And as we receive the documentation, we will begin cutting you checks toward this grand total. And then I also think we need to give them an earlier deadline, because I'm sure that some of the smaller to medium-sized municipalities might have difficulty correctly spending 10 grand or 20 grand or 30 grand. And we need to utilize these unspent funds to either, do another round of grants to municipalities or more funding for nonprofits or something of that nature.
So I think we talked about the date. We were talking anywhere that the money would be cut off, so to speak. We had talked either October 1st or October 15th, as far as they had to get us all the receipts. Do you have a preference as to what date that cutoff date should be?
I would think that October 15th would be a little more reasonable, because then it does give them 2 months to put all the paperwork together. And for some of these smaller municipalities, their boards might only meet twice during a 2-month period. But if we make it too much later than October 15th, that doesn't give yourself and the board and Margaret enough time to say, well, okay, we have $100,000 in unspent funds. What do we do with that?
Commissioner Dersham, Commissioner Pipe, does that sound okay with October 15th deadline?
I'd prefer October 1st, but I can live with the 15th.
Commissioner Pipe?
Yeah, the 15th sounds good.
Okay. All righty. So we'll get that ready, and I have been working with Jason, because part of the receipts are going to go back into the controller's office again. Jason and I, as well as Tom Martin, we've been really trying to look at, again, always the back end of this to make sure that these are auditable and there's a process. So I need to work with him to make sure how that's going to come in. Okay. Anything else on this? All righty. I really appreciate that. So it looks like we're going to go with option 2. And then the only thing I would ask you all to, in order for me to draft the letter to Bellefonte, I would just need to know what variants you wanted me to do on that. I don't know if you want to talk about that now, or if you want to have a side conversation and then get back to me, or how to move forward on the Bellefonte award letter.
Sure. So once we get these letters out, and we get some of our other allocations out, we can consider it at a future meeting. So you wouldn't necessarily have to do anything on it at this point, but we will revisit it very soon.
Okay, so the number we're going to give Bellefonte right now is the number that was on option 2, and then we'll give them another award at another point. Is that what I'm hearing?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. That sound okay by everybody? All
That's
right.
fine.
Joy, I don't
All
think we
right.
can give a dollar amount right now. It's too early.
I apologize, Mark.
I said I don't think we can give Bellefonte a dollar amount toward the police protection. It's too early yet.
But we'll give them the dollar amount that was on option 2.
Of course, yes.
Okay, I just sometimes I just want to make sure I'm clarifying and confirming so I don't make any mistakes. Thank
Sure.
you.
Okay. Okay, great. Excellent. During the meeting, Mary Kay and I sent Mary Kay and CC'd an email with her and my contact at the State Workforce Development Board, and he has linked us up with somebody from their data team. So hopefully we'll get an answer on some of those questions there before the day is out. So. Anything else? I think we're all good to adjourn, but is there anything else you needed from us, Mary Kay?
No, really appreciate all the extra time. Thank you so much. And
Sure.
special thanks to Margaret for all of her assistance, and Chad. I just really want to publicly say that they've been just really awesome, and I appreciate their support.
We feel the same way about them both. Absolutely.
Yes.
Margaret, anything else we need to do before we adjourn the commissioners meeting?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. All right. At 12:39, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at 12:39.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thanks, everybody.